Issues with my
Hello, here we are.
We are live. I'll get off my glasses so we don't have that reflection from the lights. Well, good morning, everybody. I guess I'll begin with the introduction. We are the Presence Posse. Today we are talking about presence and health and well-being and how the actual practice of staying present can and possibly should be, you get to decide, your secret weapon in your own well-being journey. And joining me today, I have HR specialist and presence teacher of peace, Jan Hart, and I'll let you introduce yourself in just a second, Jan. And I also have Dr. Fred Blum, who is a self-inquiry coach. And let me just leave it there and allow each of you to
And who are you?
introduce yourself a little bit more thoroughly, and then I'll introduce myself at the end. Jan, why don't you start if you don't mind?
You have to think about who you are, Bobby. So I'm a en route to retiring HR consultant and a blossoming peace of mind practitioner.
We'll never retire from that.
Yeah, so I'm in transition. And I work with people who I guess are having inner turbulence, is how I would describe it, and are finding themselves a bit lost or a bit stuck or not able to get themselves to do the things they want to do, or there's something standing in the way they feel. So there's generally some sort of obstacle that people are presenting with. And presence is a big part of the work that we do together. And I find that it can be very impactful with people and that they can get great outcomes from being present. So that's me. How about you, Fred?
Inner turbulence. When would anybody ever experience that? Dr. Fred Blum, what do we call me? A self-inquiry coach. Somebody the other day suggested recalibration coach. So if you're out in the audience somewhere and you think that's a good idea, give me a comment. And what I help people do is to wake up to the truth of who they are, the real them, their authentic self, behind the ego, behind this identity that we create when we're very young, essentially out of fear and insecurity, and to learn to tap into and to live from what's always been there, the peace, the love, the clarity, the freedom that is intrinsic, that it's part of our factory settings, but we've settled for this tiny little fragment of ourselves called the ego rather than living as our full selves.
Beautiful.
Fred.
I'll weigh in on the calibration coach. I like self-inquiry coach a lot better than calibration, because calibration to me seems like something we do to improve things.
Recalibration, I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, it might. All right. Sit with that a little bit and see what comes up.
Let's have an entire meeting about my coaching name. I don't want to rush through it, you know.
We'll set it aside for a future.
That's right.
My name is Bobby Cobb. I'm a liberation hypnotist and a mindfulness coach. I am in the midst, and I'm beyond the mental turmoil, but I am in the midst of experiencing cancer. I guess is the easiest way to put it. I'm in the midst of protocols, and so far it's going quite successfully. But I was really excited about this particular topic because once I became aware of the fact that it had recurred, and it's a recurrence for me, the mental static that I experienced and the self-imposed blockages and over-identification with ego was a struggle that I went through. And my timeline's a little fuzzy, but I think for a good 2.5 or 3 weeks, it was my constant companion. And it was an opportunity for me to kind of work on grounding again, because I had lived for the past 5 years a pretty grounded, peaceful, quiet life. And all of a sudden, this carefully cultivated peace and solitude, and at least I felt like it was, yeah, that's an interesting, we could explore that as well. It felt very carefully cultivated. And all of a sudden, there was just an enormous amount of mental static that I've suddenly found myself dealing with. And I very much am a believer that being present in the moment of anything that we feel like is dis-ease is really the best resource that we can tap into at the moment. So we can talk about more of that as we unfold.
Beautiful.
So I've got a question for you, Fred, from your past background. You were an integrative, kind of a holistic chiropractor.
That's
And
true.
so it was much more than just treating the symptoms
Right.
as far as you were concerned. So from that background, can you kind of set the table about the things that we're going to be talking about here today?
Sure. You may have to stop me. This is something I've talked at great length about it, in my previous life. But, if we're talking about, there's a lot of places we can enter this conversation, right? What is physical health, for example, which we're limiting this, I think, for this conversation to physical health as opposed to mental well-being and things like that, right? So what is physical health? Is it the absence of symptoms, as perhaps the medical profession would largely say, or is it just a set of numbers that someone has determined is right for you? So if my blood pressure is 120/80, if my height weight chart, whatever that is, works out, those kind of things, does that mean I'm healthy? Or is there something beyond that, that we could consider? So from my perspective, as a wellness-oriented or holistic chiropractor, what I sought to do was optimize the expression of health in that individual. So in my experience, that can look different in different people, so it's not necessarily the absence of symptoms. Some people, another, topic that we could dive into today is really, what is a symptom? And what is the purpose, perhaps, of a symptom? Is it there just as a bother that you have to eliminate? Or is there, as I believe and as I taught, some greater wisdom at play that is expressing the symptom, specifically as an alarm signal? Just like if you were to put your hand on a hot stove, you're going to get a pretty quick reminder from this, what we call innate wisdom, that you're doing something that is not consistent with your well-being, right? So in that moment, go ahead.
It's information. We're just, the symptom can also be just wisdom or information showing up.
It's in the beginning, especially depending on how severe the action is that you took, it's a suggestion. It's like your wisdom is saying, maybe not do that. Maybe that's not a good idea. So it lets you know. It gives you pain. Pain is a symptom. So we could go on and on with this, but I'll add one more piece just for now, because I think it's relevant, at least in my understanding of what really health is. And that's to discuss for a moment this wisdom that I'm talking about, and often when I would speak with, clients or do public speaking, I would ask someone in the audience, what did you have for breakfast or lunch this morning? And they'd say, I had scrambled eggs, whatever. And I'd say, well, just consider for a moment that right now, as you're sitting here, your body, this inner wisdom, is converting those scrambled eggs into heart cells and kidney cells and liver cells, and that there's like a literal miracle happening inside your body 1 billion times by the time I finish this sentence. So maybe that wisdom, given that we haven't even begun to have the capacity to do something like that, like my limited educated mind can't comprehend what it would take to do this, maybe this would be a good thing to listen to, So if it's giving me a signal saying I need to change my behavior in some way, maybe that's an important thing for me to consider.
I like that. Jan, what shows up for you as you're listening to that, or what would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to keep listening to Fred. It's fascinating. I just, when I think back over my own life, I wish that I had more awareness about that wisdom. I don't think that it's common knowledge. It's something we all know on some level, but it's not in our awareness a lot. And I think if we knew, we might have a different experience with physical symptoms when they do show up.
Yeah.
I know in my own experience, they showed up and they had to get louder and louder and eventually take me down before I stopped. And even then, it was just a matter of fix them and let me go again. I had no idea my body was trying to tell me anything. I was a million miles away from even thinking that.
Unfortunately, the many times the people that we go to for help don't have an idea about it either.
No. No. But the upside was, my own chronic pain started me on a journey of self-inquiry, and look, thankfully I discovered it. But most of the people that I meet with are not aware of that.
Yeah. Me too.
The wisdom of the body, or the wisdom of the mind, or the fact that we have our self-correcting systems when we get out of the way, and that wisdom, the power of that wisdom, it's just not common knowledge.
I have a question for the group, anybody that wants to answer it. How does this innate wisdom that we're talking about relate to presence?
Well, I'll get that started, at least. I don't know that I'll tackle it, but from my perspective and my experience and what I've noticed with my clients is that when we are present is the only time that we can really hear that wisdom, unless we're being triggered into a behavior which happens to be right in line with what it is that we're looking to do. So, and I'll come back to that if you guys want me to, but I think when we're present, like for example, with my thing, I noticed that I have bladder cancer, and I'm in all kinds of treatments, both allopathic and non-allopathic treatments. And for me, when I noticed it and the mental static started up, I was immediately going back in time and thinking, what could I have done differently that would have prevented this from reoccurring? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I live a very healthy lifestyle. I don't have a lot of toxins in my life, and I avoid them as best I can. And yet that was what my cognitive rational mind was saying. If you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently, and what will you do differently going forward? And then I would get pushed into the forwardness. My daughter just got engaged. Pretty soon they're going to start having babies, and immediately thinking, oh man, I'm very anxious to be a granddad. I'm letting things take its course. But then all of a sudden there's a lot of mental chatter that about, will you be around, and what will this be? And none of that allowed me. It was like the whispers of wisdom can exist only in an absence of time traveling an enormous amount of mental static, because our subconscious mind, as Jan pointed out, will keep knocking very persistently, lovingly, and gently at first. But if we don't get the message, it's perfectly happy to knock a little bit louder and start honking the horns until we give it the attention that it is requesting.
And make the changes that it's requesting.
Yes, exactly right. And from my perspective, and you guys can feel free to add on to it, this will be a good point to bring in Malcolm as well. From my point of view, presence and the whispers of wisdom and our innate intelligence and resilience and all of the other resources that we have that were installed at the factory, part of the original equipment by the manufacturer, are able to access it. And to do that, it's very helpful that our mind is quiet and we are present and in the moment. So with that, let me introduce our fourth. We actually have 6 members of our posse, 4 of us today. We've got Coach Malcolm Free, who very often is on these podcasts and working from behind the scenes. So Malcolm, if you want to just kind of add on to anything that you've heard and tell us a little bit about yourself prior to that, that would be awesome.
All right. Well, my name is Malcolm Free. I'm a health coach and also a neuro coach. Everything that all 3 of you guys have spoken about, you know what I'm saying, is so like dead on, right? The thing is your body and your mind are constantly communicating with you about the inner, about what's going on inner wise. The problem is we don't understand the language, right? We don't understand, our interpretation of that language of what's going on. For example, just as an example, you got a craving, right? You have a craving for ice cream, or you have let's say steak, right? You have a craving for a steak, and the only thing that you keep thinking about is this steak in Texas. We got Roadhouse, right? You craving that steak from there. It's not your body saying it wants that steak. It's your body saying that it needs protein, that you may be low on protein, right? And understanding that is what gets you, and then giving your body what it needs. Instead of steak, you might want to go get some spirulina, or get something to that effect that's going to give you protein, because that's what the body is requiring. Your different aches and pains in your body, right? Is information. That's all it is information being transmitted. You have to transform that information to answer the question that the body needs. If the body is in pain, the body's telling you where the pain is at and what's, there's something here that's not right. So you have to address that pain. Right. Or, and then, a lot of us don't understand the difference between a throbbing pain or a poking type of pain. Right. And that's a different type of thing that's going on. Right. That's a different type of remedy to fix that. So it's all about understanding the communication between the body and being present. Right. When we get back to just being present, that's where being present is identifying what's happening with you, right? Like me, myself, I do a self-check every morning. Before I get out the bed, I do a self-check. What's hurting, what's not hurting, what don't feel right, am I dizzy, I go through a self-check. And when I go through that self-check, I answer the questions, right? I deal with whatever that is, right? I might need to just stretch a little bit. I might just need to do some rotations, right? If I feel stiff in my joints or whatever, I just need to rotate, because blood is not circulating correctly, et cetera, et cetera. We can go deeper into that. But it's just understanding that, one, accept the fact that your body and brain are communicating with you about, what's going on with it, right? What it needs, right? You wake up, your mouth dry and all that. What are you going to do? You're going to go get water. You might be dreaming about Kool-Aid, but your body just wants something, water, right? So, so you might dream about an ocean or something to that effect. Your body's requesting water. It's just understanding the information and giving the body what it needs to get beyond that point or move forward.
I like that. And from like the clients that I work with, one of the things, teaching them that, and I don't go into the specifics of the pokey pain versus the throbbing pain and all of that, that's outside of my expertise. But one of the things that I notice is that people very often assume that the feelings that they're experiencing on the outside are talking to them about their circumstances. And, if you see somebody super happy and ask them why, they'll say, oh, just got a windfall, or won my case with the IRS, or my boss that was a jerk got fired and the new one seems like it's pretty cute, or I just met the right person, or whatever. They're always pointing to circumstances outside. And some of the initial work that I do is getting them to understand it's not telling you about your circumstances. And we know that because there's, days if we make a daily commute that we're peaceful and blissful and just are enjoying the drive and are lost in thought. And there's other days if somebody cuts us off, we might have a road rage incident. So what's different? It's us on the inside and getting present and listening to those bodies' signals is it turns it into a very different experience.
Well, we said this was about presence in physical health, but in reality, it's kind of hard to divide it because you may get physical symptoms of emotional stress. So, kind of like Malcolm was saying, or Bobby, I may wake up in the morning after a night of, kind of half worrying about some circumstance in my life, how something's going to turn out, whatever. And I wake up and now my neck is stiff or my back hurts or something. That's an indication, right, that I'm overloading my system, that I'm not being present, slowing down. This is a big part, right? Is just slowing down enough to hear or to feel what it is that I need to be aware of. And, I think part of the reason we go so fast is because we don't want to be present with what, it's like, maybe it's inconvenient to make the change, or at least in our minds, we think it's inconvenient to make those changes that our body or our inner wisdom are asking us to make.
In a lot of situations, what people have to understand is, we hear it all the time, right? Mind, body, soul, right? Mm-hmm. Mostly everything that we experience in the mind first. Now, how we interpret that and how we deal with that is what affects the body, right? Because even when you're in a dream state, the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what's been dreamed. It doesn't know. It can't tell the difference. It doesn't care, really. In a way of saying, right? It is what it is. So if you're mentally going through this process, your body is automatically going to react, right? Even when you're dreaming, right? When you're dreaming and you have a nightmare, right? If you notice, right, when you're having that nightmare, your heartbeat rises, right? You might be sweating, you might be, breathing real heavy. The brain does not know the difference between what is imagined and what is real. So when you wake up from whatever this dream state was, right, whatever state this was that you were in, right, your body is going to have that. You're going to feel that pain, or you're going to feel that stress, right? That release of cortisol is in the body, it's running through the body, and it's tightening up muscles. And it's, saying, like, how you feel your stomach tighten up, or you're getting ready to run, right? Your body is in that state. So when you wake up, your body is going to, stay pretty much in that state until you wake up and say, okay, that was a dream. Now it starts to relax. Now you can almost get back to normal, but you might have to stretch. You might have to, do some deep breathing. You might have to, whatever your thing is, right? To calm down, to relax, to get yourself back into a state so that you can go on with your day. Right. And so understand that you have, even if it affects your mind, it's also affecting your body. and it will lead you. And we have a where our brain does is no matter what situation we're going through, the brain is automatically going to connect that to something that we've already experienced. It's going, you know what I'm saying? And which is a good thing because it reduces stress. Because anything like a new experience, you're stressed out, right? Everything, every chemical in your body is basically running crazy, right? Trying to tighten up muscles, trying to, get the sweat going, trying to get, trying to get you to move. So, so you just have to take that and understand that when you get up in the morning, this is what people have to understand. When you get up in the morning, right, you, regardless of what you dreamed or what you went through, you got to go through a process of stretching. You got to go through a process of rotating those joints. You have to go through a process of, taking deep breaths, getting that lung to, to open up and then break it down, right? You have to go through that process in order to relieve yourself of whatever the stresses were of that night or during your time of sleep, REM sleep at that, right? So, I don't know if I just went far off what we was talking about, but, you just have to understand that, right? Even in thought, like I'm sitting here right now, I might be looking out the window, but I'm thinking whatever. I'm thinking negative thoughts. I'm thinking about, things that have, that are affecting me. My body is reacting to that. My brain and body are reacting to the thought, right? Just to the thought of, right? People have situations and circumstances where they're ill, and it's all negative thoughts when it comes to that illness. You are personally making that illness worse. You are, right? So you have to get behind that whatever ailment is, right? That's a diagnosis. That's what you were diagnosed with, right? Now you have to get information in front of your mind to say, go to whatever your situation is, go to that situation and see how many people have overcome it. How many people have went through this. Get information in front of your mind so your mind can say, I can do this too. I can get past this also, right? And it gives you more energy, more stuff to keep moving, et cetera, et cetera. I digress.
So I have another question. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say, when my own physical health was at its lowest and, it was in a state of disease and I couldn't function anymore. So I had to stop and get present. And, what I discovered, and this is the relevance of presence for me, because when I actually stopped, I could see, what you just described, Malcolm. I was physically holding myself together. My jaw was locked, my shoulders were up here, I was like this, but my whole body was tense and tight and couldn't relax. And that was where I started, physically trying to relax the body and open it and breathe into my lungs instead of into my throat. And, it was very basic, but it was only as I became more present with that the other wisdom came about, you need to move more, you need to sleep more, you need to eat different food, you need to hydrate yourself. It didn't all come at once, but it was only when I stopped and my mind quietened down that kind of information came in a way that I could hear it.
Yeah,
Because
as long
I
as
was
you're in
moving
that,
so fast and so furiously, running and racing around the place like a wicked witch on a broom, that there was no way even if I had known about the wisdom of my body, not sure I would have heard or listened to it.
Right.
there's
Presence
okay.
is,
So when you got cortisol and you got stress and you got fear, and you got all of these different things running through you, right? In your brain, your thoughts are scary. You're what I'm saying, you're in that fear state.
yeah.
There's no there's no way for you to possibly think intellectually. There's no way because the energy from the intellectual part of the brain is down to the bottom part of the brain of your fear factor, right? Now, once you take a deep breath, you relax a little bit or whatever, right? You take that energy from down here and it starts to move up. You may find yourself getting like emotional real quick or whatever, but keep breathing, keep bypassing, and then you'll get to that. That's when the brain starts putting things together. Like, okay, let's work on our breathing. Let's work on, what I'm saying, just relax. You know what I'm saying? That's when the brain starts to help you. And that's when that voice you hear starts to tell you, like, you know what, I know better than this, right? I know I need to drink more water, right? Or I know I need to, just relax and breathe, right? And that's when that comes, but you can't get there under that fear factor. You can't get there in that primitive state. So you have to relax, you have to breathe, and you have to really think about it, because the answers to that you're seeking are here. It's already here. You may have to get more information, right? You know what I'm saying? More left brain information, numbers, right? You know what I'm saying? Different situations. But the story of your success is already here, right? In the right brain, in your right hemisphere of your brain. It's already there, right? You just got to get the numbers. You just got to get the facts. You just got to get information to support what's going on over here in the right brain, right hemisphere. Make sense?
Yeah.
But I just want to underline that there is another source of intelligence. Someone, I wish we knew what your name was, but we have you as a Facebook user, is talking about the connection to the heart, and I mean, this could be a whole other conversation, but it's somewhere where the heart and the mind converge that we can really, really experience true presence, not presence just of the mind, which is something for sure, but it's incomplete without the presence of the heart. And the wisdom of the heart and the wisdom of the mind may not necessarily conflict, but offer two different angles on the same thing. So, I think
coherence.
Coherent is such a beautiful word here. Yeah. And everything Malcolm's saying, because sometimes you just need to understand something better, get the facts. Oh, okay. Where do I get more vitamin D, whatever it may be. And sometimes it's more subtle or more personal, where, somebody else's advice isn't necessarily going to apply to us. And this particular conversation is about presence and health. I mean, do I slow down enough to listen to what my body's telling me? This is what we've been talking about. Do I pause long enough to be present with my pain? See, that's even a little bit different. It's not just, all right, I hear you, but like, can I really listen to it? Can I really be present with, I'm doing these various exercise programs that, often involve pushing me past where my mind would like to stop. And what I find, it's very counterintuitive, is that when I lean into the pain, or I actually allow myself to experience it more fully, is that somehow, paradoxically, that gives me access to a deeper level of strength, a deeper level of resilience. And I think that strength, that resilience, very applicable, especially if we find ourselves sick or challenged in some kind of way, that we need that extra reserves.
The thing, I see you, Bobby. The thing about the heart, right? A lot of times, of course, I'm a neuro guy, so I really get into the mind brain thing, right? But the heart is a very important factor in information, right? It's a very important factor in information, but also is the gut, right? Mm-hmm. The gut also, because that's where, majority of your immune system resides, et cetera, et cetera. So, what I'm saying, it's all, a lot of people try to separate it and make the argument, the heart, the brain, what I'm saying? It's all one system. It's all one system. And you're going to get, here's the thing, just like in the brain, right? You have the three parts of the brain. You got your fear brain, you got your emotional brain, and you got your intellectual brain. Within your body is the same thing, right? Within your body is the same thing. The only thing is you're going to get information from all areas. You're going to get information from the gut. You're going to get information from the heart. You're going to get information from the brain. You're going to get information. All of the information, you know what I'm saying, is good information depending on your thought process and your actions and reactions to certain things, right? You know what I'm saying? Because what's good for me might not be good for Bobby, or what's good for Bobby is not good for Fred. But you know what I'm saying, how we interpret the information and what we apply, right? And I think somebody said applicable. But anyway, you know what I'm saying, when we apply the information and we seek even more information, right? That is what helps us in our process. One, we start to really understand what our body is saying. We really start to, the more we talk to people, say, you know, saying, oh, don't listen to what's going on up here. You better listen to it. You know what I'm talking about? Or you're going to find yourself in a bad situation.
But
right?
you got to know what when you're listening, is it, you know, again, what we're calling this inner wisdom, or is it just your fear? Because the two might lead you in very different directions. So
Fear itself is a form of wisdom.
maybe, but you know, I'm not referring to it in that context here.
Oh.
So, for example, you know, Bobby gets a diagnosis that he probably
Right.
was, you know, hoping for or planning for. You know, fear may, and Bobby, you're welcome to speak on this. You know, what was your initial reaction? Like, what did the fear, which pretty much had to be present if you're a human being, what did that try and get you to do? Maybe, for example, just to ignore it, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
pretend like, you know, versus what some deeper source of wisdom might have told you.
Yeah. So a couple of things on that. One on the heart versus the mind versus the gut. I agree that it is all one unified, holistic system, but it is also interesting when you can see that somebody is overthinking something, which that was 100% my initial reaction. I mean, if there was a tachometer from my brain, I went from nice idle to almost red line pretty quickly. And that manifested itself like when I went to an emergency clinic because I don't have a primary care physician. And, you know, they were doing the initial tests that they did. One of the things that they did was check my blood pressure, which I don't remember the exact reading, and I may be exaggerating slightly, but I'm not sure that I am. I think the top number was like in the 190s, and the lower number was in the 110s, which I don't have high blood pressure. I had never experienced something like that. And I look at that number and I'm thinking, I'm at the wrong place. I should be at the ER, not at the walk-in clinic. And the nurse practitioner said, "Oh, that's very common here. We call that white coat syndrome. Let me take it again." And just the mere fact that she said it was common, again, and it was like now 158 over 95 or something like that, a dramatic drop just from one little bit of information. But the part that I like about the head, so if somebody is overthinking, they're overly relying on their conditioning and their rational mind, I will often say to them, you know, in a coaching session or whatever, I'll say, okay, we know what your head thinks. Take a deep breath and just tell me what your heart thinks. And then they'll say whatever they'll say. Beautiful. Now take another deep breath. Tell me what your gut thinks. And, you know, it's a simple exercise that I'm kind of offering a suggestion. Let's just pretend for a moment that these are three separate voices inside of you that are all speaking wisdom, and let's see which one resonates. And that is a cool little shift. And so once I got, and as I said earlier, it took about probably 2.5 or 3 weeks of constant mental static, where I felt like I was a World War II guy trying, you know, on an island trying to get back to the main communication, but all I'm hearing is static. And what came up for me was around resistance. The fact that in order for the imagined life to unfold that I wanted to unfold. Cancer was 100% not on the menu, and I didn't want it to be on the menu, so I'm resisting it. And my mind is doing what the mind does so well. What does this mean? Why is this happening? Is it your fault? You know, it's asking all of those questions that it innately answers. And what I got was easing the things that I am resistant to. And the flash of insight for me was a poem that I was reading, ancient poem that begins, "The great way is easy for those with no preferences." And I read that line and I just sat there and, you know, I'm like, preferences, man, you got a lot of them right now. And can you ease back on that? And that was enough to get me to the point where my static could calm down and then I could hear all of the other things. So fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I live in Alaska. Right now our temps are in the 30s and I love it. The snow's melting and I'm going to miss it. And I'm new here, so it might just be freshness. I go on a 2-week vacation with a friend to Hawaii, and it was really hot there, like the Florida hot that I left once you got off the beach and away from the thing. And a cool little thing that I was doing, and it just spontaneously happened. My friend turns to me and goes, "You got to be burning up. Aren't you uncomfortable?" And I said, "Oh, my body's very uncomfortable. My body is very hot." And just that slight dissociation allowed me to recognize who I truly am is not really hot right now. My body's hot and it's sending signals, and that's okay because I'm in a warm place and I'm used to cool places. So, you know, I think just being present and getting that mental static to calm down. From where I'm sitting, it seems to be our secret weapon.
Resistance, you get information. Resistance itself is information. Information, you get negative information, right? You get some information that you didn't want to hear or whatever, right? It's considered negative. So it's negative energy. And then you go through a process, we go through a process of resisting. Resisting itself is negative energy, right? Because it takes energy. It takes the energy thing. You're in, not actually in denial, but you're in fight, right? You're resisting. So you're adding more negative energy to the situation, right? In most cases, a lot of cases, some things you just have to, you have to accept that. Now, how do I deal with this? Right. As long as I resist, I resist. I'm not open-minded to how to fix this or how to start a process of working on myself to fix this. So you have to drop the resistance. You have to drop it, right? And you have to accept it that this is what the diagnosis is. This is what was being said. Okay, where do I go from here, right? How do I start a process of healing or working with this thing, right? Because if I'm gonna put up a good fight, I need to know how to put up a good fight, right? I can fight all day long. You know what I'm talking about? I'm a good fighter, me personally. I'm a good fighter. But if I jump in a boxing ring with Mike Tyson, right, who's a professional boxer, he's probably gonna box me to sleep, most likely. You know what I mean? And then my fight or flight takes place and I run out the ring or whatever. But, right? But when it comes to me just fighting, I have confidence. I have no resistance in that fight, right? So, you know what I'm saying? You have to accept it. And then you have to get the information in front of you to say, what can I do from my part, from my perspective? Okay, change my eating habits, change my, maybe, maybe get out and, do a little more workout, maybe, take more water, maybe, get more time where I'm releasing myself of stress. And that's another thing. I'm going to say that real quick and I'm going to let it go. And sometimes, stress itself causes inflammation in the body. And that inflammation in the body is what increases the high blood pressure, what increases the diabetes, what increases the other diseases within the body. So you also have to, and this is any ailment that you have, you have to address it on the inside, but you also have to address it from the outside. You have to reduce stress. The people stress, you have to reduce that stress. You have to reduce those situations outside and inside in order to put up a true fight. In order to put up that true fight. So, so when we talk about, the different elements of being present, is being present of self and what's going on with you, right? What's stressing you out? What is causing you more stress? What is causing you to eat the way that you're eating? What's causing you to, not to? And this is my thing as a coach is I never try to figure out what's wrong with you. I never try to tell you what you need to do. That's not my thing. My thing is to figure out, why do you know what you know, right? And you're not doing it. Why do you have the information to help yourself lose weight? Why do you have the information to lower your A1C? Why do you have that information in front of you or in your brain and you're not doing it? See, that's the problem, right? Why are you not doing the things that you already have the information, the heart, and the gut to do? Or maybe it's not the gut.
I can address that from at least one other perspective. There's actually a couple of things that hearing everyone speak that come to me. I'm going to talk about resistance really quick, because I think resistance is really interesting. Resistance is like friction. There's some part of us that doesn't perceive, that doesn't experience that it has the resources to do whatever it is that is being asked of us. So we resist it. I say, well, if I'm an MD and I tell a patient, well, you're going to have to lose 50 pounds or you're going to have a heart attack, probably within the next 3 to 6 months, you'd think that people would be running from my office right to the gym. I'm not an MD, by the way.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the numbers are like literally less than 3%. When literally told that it is life and death, less than 5% of the people will make an actual substantive change. And this is resistance. And the resistance is saying, at some level, some part of me doesn't feel that I have what it takes. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there's some resource that I don't have. May not be true, but that's what we think, right? So that's all I'm going to say about resistance. I want to share something about Malcolm's question, which has to do with why don't people make the changes from a minute ago. And I want to share this. Is this showing up the right way on the screen?
Yep.
Read it?
Yep.
You don't have to look at it. So this is a model created by one of my first real mentors in the world, a guy named Dr. Donnie Epstein, who created the remarkable healing arts of network spinal analysis and so many other things. We created this model, which is called the Triad of Change. And the main thing, do I have a pen? No, I don't, that I want to point to here are the three sides, okay? So we have the side says perception, behavior, and structure. So Malcolm, what I heard you talking about was essentially behavior, right? Why don't they take the actions that we know they need to take?
Right.
Well, there are two other sides to this triad. You have perception, which is essentially what we think and feel. Which is kind of what I was talking about a moment. Some part of us doesn't feel up to the task of changing that behavior. And sometimes it's also the structure, a lack of a plan, a lack of some system maybe that I can tap into that says, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. So anytime we're ever trying to make a change in our lives, and it's not happening. Either it's not happening, like we can't get it started, or it's not sustainable, meaning we keep starting and stopping and all that kind of stuff. We can know without a doubt that one of these three elements is missing. Okay. Right. And we can look at that. Now, very much like Malcolm said a moment ago, the trick here is then you don't try and fix the one that's missing. It's more to see the areas that you are strong in and build them up. And what happens is, if I'm really good with perception, for example, meaning I can get really clear about what my purpose is, why I need to change, what the different theories and ideas about it, and I'm still not taking action, maybe I use this perception to get myself inspired enough that I create a plan. And that plan then leads the behavior part of the triad to become easily undertaken. Does
What's
that
the
make
word
sense?
in the middle?
Energy is another part of this whole conversation. Energy,
Okay.
you got different types of energy: life energy, emotional energy, mental energy, even spiritual energy, which is what we use like the fuel to power that change.
In this situation, like I agree totally with what. As a matter of fact, you need to send me that. The thing that you have to understand, right? We only got a few minutes left, but one thing that you have to understand in this process is this is where you may need a coach, right? You may need a coach to do the planning. You may need a coach to you may have one part of that three triangle my man Doc just talked about. You may be strong in that point, but the other two areas you may be weak. You might not be strong at. So you need a coach, man. And people have to understand that that's why we are here. I mean, we're here for deeper reasons than that, and some of us may know it, some of us may not. But right, you have to get somebody in place or put somebody in place to say, okay, here's what we're going to do about this, right? Here's what we're doing about this. And maybe build you up to a certain level to where you don't need a coach, but you at the beginning, you need a coach. You need somebody to say, somebody to lean on. You need somebody, somebody to assist you in the total process, no matter how you write the book, right? You need somebody to assist you in your process. And it may be for 3 months, it may be, and I would tell anybody, don't do a coaching program for less than 3 months, right? At least go 3 months, right? And then go from there, see where you're at from there, because that coach doesn't have, and I hate to get off into the coaching thing, that coach doesn't have enough time to really help you in 30 days. They really don't, right? They need more time to know you. You need more time to understand the process. And I'm going to leave it there.
I want to come back to something that you've said, Fred, and I'd like, maybe this will be my closing piece. When you were talking about your model of change, and one of the things that you said was that on some level there's some perception that we don't have some resource that we need to follow through and do it, whatever it is, that change we're trying to make. And it comes back to presence, and it comes back to the spiritual beings that we are. And if we remember who we really are, then we have a reservoir of all the resources we could ever need that can do the heavy lifting. And presence can be a wonderful doorway to all that information.
Yeah.
I loved what you said.
I loved what you just said.
Okay, so who's the moderator on this thing?
We don't have one tonight. It's a free for all.
Jan, close us out, man. We got like 3 minutes or so, 7 minutes.
Yeah, let's just have everybody take a moment and kind of, if folks have resonated with the things that any of us had said and you'd like to know about the work that we do, let's take a moment and just let folks know how they can get in contact with you if they want to explore things a little bit more deeply. Jan, ladies first.
Thank you. Well, you can find me on Facebook, Jan Hart. Feel free to get in touch. I'm happy to chat with anybody or have a little exploration.
Beautiful. Fred?
Yeah, I love these conversations that we get to have every week. I think they're really important, and I think they're more important than it may be obvious that they are at first, because what we're really talking about is how to take your life out of just sort of going through the motions and really take it into a level of real presence, of real engagement. And really living our lives, and I think that um, these conversations are giving people a lot of the pieces of that puzzle that if they really begin to apply and implement could be very, very powerful. Toward that end, as Malcolm pointed out earlier, sometimes you need some help with that, or sometimes you just want to make it go faster, if nothing else. Maybe just two heads are better than one or something. So if if I can be of service in any way, that would truly be my honor. And I make it easy. Frankly, if you're interested in talking with me, the first conversation is always offered at zero cost, really and it's really a true coaching conversation. It's my attempt to be of service and see if I can help you. And if I do, awesome. If it feels like there's more to talk about after that, we can figure that out too. But just reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook too, and let's go forward from there.
Malcolm, how do folks get a hold of you if they're interested in exploring your work a little bit more deeply?
Well, they can. My information is right there. They can email me. They can find me on Facebook under Malcolm Free or Coach J Malcolm Free. But I'm gonna take a minute for people that's connected to us, that's watching us, that's been here for us. We want to say thank you. In the next coming soon, all the shows that we've done up to this point will be put uh, in a certain format and will be a podcast. Right? We're gonna take the podcast, take the shows, the previous shows, and we're gonna put them on a podcast, and we're gonna let that run. From that point, we will also bring in the new shows. So you can go back and watch all the shows, or at least listen to all the shows. Also, we got a YouTube channel that we're going to put the shows on. If you physically, want to watch the shows, we're going to put all the shows on that YouTube channel. So, what I'm saying, just stay with us, stay supportive. Tell a friend about us, man. Tell people about us, and what I'm saying, so we can continue to do this and continue to bring information. Sometimes is we don't really get into a lot of controversial conversations, but the information that we put out, I believe, is great information, and it can serve more than just 100 people. We can serve a lot of people with this information. So please, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here, and just stay connected with us and tell a friend or two or three or 10, whatever, right? But help us keep this thing going. Because when we see you comment, when we see you being a part of this, that motivates us to dig deeper in our brains to give you the best possible answer that we can. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And my name's Bobby Cobb. As I said, I'm a liberation hypnotist. The easiest place to find me is also on Facebook. I did a program last year called Spring Into Mindfulness. And that's a free program that I have in my group called Our Mindful Life. And I'm actually redoing it this year. I've gotten some cool new insights as a result of my journey that I gave you some highlights on. And some of the things that I was seeing a year ago, I see significantly different now. So if you're interested in exploring that it's free. Each video is like about 10 to 15 minutes long, typically. Just an exercise a day or a little thought concept a day. And as I mentioned, I'm kind of redoing those now to add in the new depth. So thank you guys all for tuning in. As Malcolm said, we're turning this into a bit more of a formal podcast. So I'm sure we'll be ending these with like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the things that those guys do. And we very much appreciate you tuning in. I think I speak for everybody in saying that these are so cool for us that we would do them if nobody was watching, but we're really honored that people are and that we're touching people's lives. So thank you guys very much for tuning in, and we'll see you same time.
Real quick. Next week's show, the topic next week is relationship with yourself.
Present.
Relationship with self. So make sure you guys join in on that. I'm not sure who all is on that panel. But it's the Presence
It sure
Posse,
is.
so it's going to be a good show anyway. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.